The original release of the New York to Trenton route was nothing short of disastrous, and I'll keep my original review public so you can see just how bad the route was at first. Dovetail has since come along and attempted to fix the unrealistically Spartan timetable, but it's only ended up making the situation even worse. I was honestly hesitant to make this updated review because of just how much I hate this route. Just a quick word of warning, I think this is one of the harshest reviews I've ever made, but the criticism is not baseless. But I know that there will still be some squishy fanboys who can't handle what I have to say, and in the words of Brett Cooper, I guess because it's 2023, it's a horrible thing to be blunt and honest. This add-on was first released in February 2023 despite clearly being in an unfinished state, and I'm sure as hell not the only one who had a negative review of this poor excuse for a DLC. It still costs an appalling 57 New Zealand dollars at the normal price, and you only get the 58 miles of track from New York Penn Station to Trenton. I still think it's a disgrace that we don't even get the tiny Princeton branch, which, need I remind you, is only 2 miles long. As if the route concept wasn't stupid enough, a large section of it isn't even brand new to TSW. The section from Newark International Airport to Sunnyside Yard was reused from the ancient NEC New York route that for whatever reason was never updated to be compatible with TSW2 or its following sequels. You can tell that section is reused because of the awfully basic scenery, which is noticeably worse than the new section from Newark Airport to Trenton. Annoyingly, Dovetail haven't got a SEPTA license, which is why they had to cut the route short at Trenton, New Jersey, instead of doing the sensible thing and continuing to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. On the motive power scene, this add-on is still just as awful as it was when it was brand new. Despite the updated timetable, we only get one locomotive and one type of passenger coach from the New Jersey Transit fleet, that being the Bombardier ALP-46 and Multilevel coaches. There's no reason why they shouldn't have added the ALP-45DP and single-decker Comet coaches, or better yet, the Arrow 3 and Princeton branch. Upon further research, I've discovered that the real ALP-46s actually have, or at least had, steel bells, but the model in-game has an E-bell. That's a feature on the updated ALP-46A variant, not the original ALP-46, as far as I know. When I was looking over footage of the real things, I noticed that the ALP-46 and ALP-46A have completely different motor sounds. But this model in-game definitely sounds like the original ALP-46, so why Dovetail thought they could get away with not including the ALP-46A is anyone's guess. The Amtrak side of the motive power scene is no better than NJT, because we only get the Siemens ACS-64 locomotive and Amfleet coaches reused from Boston Sprinter, as well as the return of the Metroliner cab car. For whatever reason, the SW1000R shunter was never updated for the newer TSW iterations. The iconic Acela Express has a layer in timetable mode, but the rail scene still looks incredibly boring and unrealistic when you only have Acela, Northeast Regional and Keystone services represented authentically. And considering that a real Amtrak locomotive even carried a Train Sim World advertisement at one point, it's disgraceful that we still have barely any Amtrak rolling stock in TSW. We should have, at the very least, the General Electric P42DC and Superliner coaches for Cajon Pass, or better yet, part of the Downeasters route out of Boston North, complete with the XF40PH turned NPCU. The original timetable mode was absolutely horrendous, especially on the NJT side. You only got 10 full-length New York to Trenton services with the ALP-46 leading, and the route just felt way too quiet for something that's supposed to be the busiest railway line in the United States. With the updated schedule, you now get 191 services with the ALP-46 leading, and 176 services with the multi-level cab car leading. Do remember that not all of those are passenger services. Some of them are empty stock moves to and from Sunnyside Yard. Out of those 191 services with the ALP-46 leading, 51 of them are full-length runs from New York to Trenton or vice versa. You've also got the Morristown, Gladstone, Montclair Boonton, and North Jersey coastline services represented, albeit for very short sections of their respective runs. Despite the increased number of NJ Transit services in-game, the rail scene still looks very boring when every single NJT train consists of an ALP-46 with multi-level coaches. This route is in dire need of more NJT motive power, although I would rather see Dovetail actually fix the atrocious optimization on this route before trying to add anything more to it. As for Amtrak services, these were tolerable even in the original timetable. But, for whatever reason, Dovetail still had the Silver Meteor and Silver Star, amongst a few other services like the Palmetto, Pennsylvanian, etc., represented despite not bothering to provide authentic coaches for those services. This makes the rail scene look even less realistic, as if the lack of good NJT motive power variation wasn't frustrating enough. Currently, you get 97 playable services with the ACS-64 leading, 26 with the Metroliner cab car leading, and 45 services for the Acela. There aren't any freight trains present in timetable mode, not even for AI services. This is despite the fact that Dovetail promised that freight trains would be added as part of the timetable update, using the CSX equipment from the Sandpatch grade route. Boston Sprinter, on the other hand, actually had static CSX GP38-2s and freight wagons in the sidings right from the start. As part of the update, we finally get Long Island Railroad AI services at New York Penn Station. For whatever reason, these were completely absent in the original timetable, but it would appear that Dovetail didn't bother thoroughly testing the new timetable, assuming they even have a quality control or beta testing department, and instead they seem to have done their usual routine of rushing something out to release without bothering to fix the obvious problems. What's the bet that they think us players are the beta testers, instead of their actual staff? There is constant stuttering and lagging throughout the route, even when you're well away from New York City. The worst performance I noticed had to be at Penn Station, where the frame rate can drop to as low as 14 frames per second when you're on foot, due to the sheer number of trains present. And by the way, this isn't on some outdated dinosaur that's running off an old lettuce, aka Windows 7. No, I'm using a decently powerful gaming PC that runs on Windows 11. Even the London to Brighton route runs smoother than this embarrassment. My computer has got 16 GB of RAM, and apparently not even 16 is enough to run New York to Trenton properly. I almost wonder if Dovetail gave any thought to the fact that not everyone who plays this game, A, plays on consoles, or B, is going to have super powerful computers with sufficient RAM, assuming they ever care about their customers after we've forked over too much of our hard-earned money. I only had the patience to drive 2 timetable mode services as part of this review. The first was a Keystone service with the ACS-64, taking over at Trenton and completing the journey to New York Penn. The service was scheduled to leave Trenton at 12:13 and call only at Newark Penn on the way. Even after the timetable update, the route still feels like a desolate ghost town for most of the journey. I thought this was supposed to be the busiest railway line in the United States. There was a ridiculous amount of padding in the schedule, and I arrived at Newark Penn with 11 minutes to spare before the scheduled departure time at 12:52. The long wait was made even more boring by the empty and lifeless station, and it wasn't until 6 minutes after I arrived when other trains finally showed up. One northbound NJT and one southbound Amtrak service. The next day, I decided to go back the other way with the ALP-46 and multi-level coaches. The first attempt was on train 3845, the 1306 New York Penn to Trenton service, calling at all stations except North Elizabeth and Jersey Avenue. Or at least, I tried to complete this run, but I only got as far as the junction near the Meadows complex because there was an Acela service in front of me that got stuck behind an ACS-64, which, in turn, was stuck at a broken signal that insisted on staying red even though there were clear aspects right in front of the broken one. Oh, and this random ACS-64 pulled up right behind my train as well. Quite frankly, I'm disgusted, but not at all surprised, to see Dovetail not bothering to repair such a crucial error as a broken signal. How can their non-existent quality control team be so inept as to miss something like this before the DLC is released? How many times do I have to say that we're paying customers here, not beta testers? This is something that should have been fixed before release, assuming Dovetail is even remotely capable of doing something so simple yet so important. I suppose they would, if it was a British or German route, of course. There wasn't any point in staying in that broken scenario, so I tried another service in the reasonable hope that these signals would actually work this time. For the second attempt, I tried NJT train 3833, the 1002 Penn Station to Trenton service, scheduled to call at all stations except North Elizabeth and Jersey Avenue. As I expected, there was constant lag and stuttering throughout the entire journey, and I only saw 19 AI trains for that entire 58-mile-long run, not counting static rolling stock in the sidings, which was still largely empty. 9 of those trains were from Amtrak, the other 10 from NJT, and there weren't even any freight wagons in any of the sidings. Also, I heard a weird beep whenever I passed an Amtrak ACS-64 going the other way. I think it was the alerter. And speaking of other trains, not a single one of the 19 AI trains I saw on this run was an Amtrak service overtaking me on the fast line. One of the most infuriating issues with the original route was something so incredibly simple, and yet Dovetail still didn't bother fixing it before release. Locomotives on AI services were moving with their pantographs down. Fortunately, this issue with pantographs appears to have been fixed at last, but this should have been done before the route was released. I'm probably going to sound like a broken record at this point, but fuck it, I might as well say it again. We are paying customers, Dovetail, not beta testers. The one issue that really pissed me off, even more so than the downed pantographs, was the complete lack of overhead wires between Sunnyside Yard and the East River tunnels. Sure, that was eventually patched, but I do not forgive Dovetail for leaving such a fundamental error in the initial release. As far as I'm concerned, it was further proof that their quality control team is either fictional or atrociously incompetent. As one might expect from a Dovetail product, there are still issues present throughout the updated route besides the lag and beeping AI trains. For starters, there's this large area just north of Princeton Junction with no proper grass details, just a flat 2D texture instead. The same issue is clearly visible on the north bank of the Raritan River, just north of New Brunswick Station. For some reason, the AI trains did not have their tail lights switched on, and yet the player trains did have tail lights that are on by default. The ALP-46 is supposed to have a walk-through engine room like the ACS-64, but for whatever reason, this is not modelled on the NJT locomotive. And why the hell is the implementation of this important feature so inconsistent? Well, I suppose a better question would be, why am I expecting anyone from Dovetail to ever take notice of what I'm saying? There are no NPCs visible on any of the stations, which makes the route look even more lifeless than it already does. With these trains essentially looking like they're running with no purpose, it's like the rail scene on the Isle of Sodor in Thomas and the Magic Railroad all over again. The trains visibly clip through some of the catenary masts between Newark International Airport and Newark Penn, because the masts were placed too close to the track. This issue still hasn't been fixed after all these years. Speaking of issues that Dovetail still hasn't bothered to fix, you can still see trains clipping through platforms at Penn Station. I noticed this bug on tracks 2, 9, 14, 16 and 20. Then there's this AI train I spotted one time, where the doors had been opened on the wrong side. Speaking of doors, it's absolutely shocking to see that TSW, after all these years, still doesn't have selective door opening. This means that all the passenger doors down one side of your train will open, even when you're at a platform that's too short to accommodate the entire train, such as Linden. I think this problem first appeared with the Long Island Railroad add-on in 2018, and there's no reason why this error should still be present in the game. Trust doesn't test games to still not bother fixing these things. Got to keep wringing out people's wallets for half-baked crap, I suppose. Actually, it's not even half-baked, more like quarter-baked, if that, especially in the case of New York to Trenton. The whole New York to Trenton situation is still an absolute disaster, and I'm rapidly losing my patience and any respect I may have had for Dovetail games. With the bad route concept, lack of the Princeton branch, non-existent motive power variation, a disastrous initial release, and, to top it all off, a new timetable that just makes the route a laggy pile of arse, this is now the worst route in the entire history of TSW, blasting the LIRR right out of the water. The American DLC in Train Sim World is often worse than the European content, and this isn't coming from any personal bias I may have, it's genuinely based on what I've seen whilst playing the game. And the atrocious quality of the New York to Trenton route compared to the British and German stuff makes me wonder if Dovetail is secretly biased against the USA, despite that country being a core market for the game. If even someone from the smaller land down under is pissed off at Dovetail's poor treatment of the US routes compared to the European stuff, you know that the devs have really screwed up. If you haven't got the NEC New York to Trenton route yet, do not waste your time with it. Indeed, I've uninstalled it now that this review is done. This laughable excuse of a DLC is nothing more than a frustrating time waster, and I want to end this video with a message directed squarely at Dovetail themselves, even though, at this point, assuming any of them have even started watching the video, they're probably plugging their ears and pretending that everything's all sunshine, rainbows and lollipops. And that goes for the fanboys and all. How can you seriously think it's acceptable to release an unfinished route while still charging that outrageous full price? How do you seriously expect people to continue supporting this game when you consistently let us down with questionable and half-baked products that rarely, if ever, get only a few of their problems fixed? Or do you just think that you can plug your ears, ignore all the constructive criticism, and continue your terrible business model until the cows come home? With a reputation this far down the toilet, you'd need a damn good plumber to try and fish it out, and I don't see how your company could keep going much longer. It's about bloody time you stopped pandering to the easily excited kids and fanboys who know sod all about the railways while driving like reckless, ill-educated fools, and started respecting the dedicated rail fans instead. Or do you think there are insufficient profits to be made from that side of the community? Shame on you, Dovetail Games! Shame on you!